talk about decentralization and bank annihilation. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Litecoin, your coin, blockchain, baby. Mondays at 1600 hours Eastern Studio A.
Deep understanding must arise during these times of unparalleled deceit. A view into the depths of society upon which this country has fallen, a storm brews upon the horizon. It's been said that those that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear will play a paramount role in the furthering of humanity and civilized society. But can civilized society and humanity survive the coming conflicts not seen since a dawn of time in ages bypast? But you can find true forms of information and knowledge in abundance at revolution.radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the globe. Stand upon the right side of history.
General Homer, you've got to get us out of here now! I won't let you down. I won't let you down, son.
Revolution.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, and welcome to Sunday Night Live. It's Christine Hart and TAJ GILL going out live across America. Tonight we have guest author Brian Barrott. We're going to be talking about Andrew Cobra Tate, and we are going to be talking a little bit about Brian's book. Over to you, Taj. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, everything's good. Yeah, how are you?
Clearing up, yeah. A little bit caught up with this virus thing, that keeps going around the UK. The sore throat, hangover style headache, and feeling tired, and then it kind of, it just keeps coming round and round. It's quite a drag,
All right, okay. I hope you feel better soon.
Oh, thank you. How are you, Brian? Are you there already? Oh, Brian? I can't hear Brian, but I can see him. So he's definitely with us. He
Okay.
will probably speak up later. Do you want to go and talk to the crowd about Tate and Logan Paul? Just to start on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, where do I start?
For people that don't know.
Yeah, well, Andrew Tate, I guess you would say, is an influencer, like an online influencer. He was an I guess, MMA sort of like kickboxer, and turned into a billionaire sort of businessman, I guess. He sells courses online on how to, as he calls it, break out of the matrix. He sells courses on how to make money, how to become basically same as him. And recently,
how does one break out of the matrix then?
I haven't bought any of his stuff, so I wouldn't know. But I think it's probably all a bit of a scam to make money.
Maybe it's like some of those guys, the young guys on YouTube that talk about living your own life and making money in your own. It's easier said than done. I mean, you have to have a service or a product.
I've watched a few videos of people who have actually bought his program and done reviews online, and there's nothing in his program that you can't find yourself on for free online.
Yeah.
It's all like marketing stuff and how to open up an Amazon store and how to sell, drop ship stuff and all this kind of stuff. It's nothing new, but he's just wrapped it all up into one nice little package kind of thing and sold it online. And he also does a course where you can have one-to-one contact with him, but I think it costs a few $1,000s. But again, the person who bought it never actually got to speak to him one-to-one.
All right.
So, yeah. But, I mean, he's in the news recently because just before the new year, he was arrested in Romania on trafficking charges and some fraud charges. And he's had all of his cars, bank accounts, etc., property all confiscated. He's currently on a 30-day arrest by the Romanian police. They're holding him for 30 days to investigate the trafficking charges further and to find out basically if he's committed any criminal offences. So that's why he's been in the news recently. And he is the type of person that you wouldn't really expect this to happen to. I mean, I know he's been called like a misogynist and all this kind of thing, and he uses women or whatever. But a lot of his friends have come out and spoken up and said that he's, a good guy. He recently converted to Islam, which is also one of the reasons why people are saying maybe he is being targeted now because Romania is very much sort of Catholic, and he's got a lot of friends and influential people in Romania are not happy that he's converted to Islam, and they want to somehow get back at him or, threaten him in some way. I know he owns properties in Dubai and other places around the world, including London. So people thought it was a bit strange that he was in Romania at that time, especially after converting to Islam, and that maybe that was one of the reasons why he was arrested. But I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos on both sides of the fence. I've seen interviews on Vice from women who say that they were used by him. Other people could say that they're trying to get back at him. Ex-girlfriends, ex-people who worked for him. He used to run a web business, like a webcam business, and some of the women, I think, from there have come forward, given statements that they were used, possibly trafficked. I don't know. I can't really say too much about whether any of that is true or not. It's all down to the criminal investigation right now in Romania. So that sort of wraps up what's been going on with him. I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff or videos or news about it, Christine.
Yeah, I have. I just saw Brian finally join us. Hi there, Brian. How are you?
Hi, you told me 1 o'clock.
11 o'clock for us here.
All right. Because 11 o'clock would be 1 o'clock in the morning here.
Right.
So it must have been 10.
Well, it's 11 now, so...
Is it? Okay, really? Okay.
Oh. Anyway, we were talking about Andrew Tate. I know you want to talk about your book. We just started off about this, and so we'll talk a bit about this and then go to your book. Have you heard about this man?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. He said something against the what's the name? The activist, Greta Thunberg. Yeah, he said something about Greta Thunberg, and then he was arrested, more or less.
Really?
Yeah. He had a big argument online with Greta Thunberg, and then he went to Romania and was arrested. I mean, because I saw the argument, and literally a few days later he goes to was it Romania, And apparently, one of the girls who was there, boyfriend didn't know she was there, and she rang the boyfriend and said, the boyfriend said, "Oh, you with Andrew Tate?" And she said, "Oh, I had no choice. He kidnapped me."
Yeah, I heard that story as well, and then he reported it to the police, and they're saying that's why.
Yeah,
Andrew
and that's why they've done it. But the thing is Romania is a small, poor country, and of course Romania's turned up with quite a lot of, Tate's turned up. He's got quite a lot of money, and obviously, if you can get hold of his money, then everything's going to be really good for you, isn't it? To put it bluntly. I mean, there is that side to the coin as well. I mean, realistically, I mean, if he's a what do you call it, a trafficker, there would be, there would be masses of evidence, not hearsay, to put it bluntly. I mean, sort of like, I mean, the whole thing just doesn't seem correct to me because, where's the evidence, to put it bluntly?
Yeah, I've also heard that they're putting him in 30 days in prison they're going to try and kill him, quiet and sort of shut him up kind of in that way, because I know he has been in the hospital within the last week. He was taken to the hospital for some, I can't remember what it was, lung infection or something that he caught in prison. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
Surely it's not just for upsetting Greta Thunberg, though.
It's not just Greta Thunberg. He says things like he doesn't believe in the cove. Yeah.
The what?
The cove of the cove.
What's the
cove? The COVID.
Oh.
He doesn't believe in the COVID. He doesn't believe in injections. He doesn't believe in global warming, and he's extremely vocal about it. Essentially, he doesn't follow the narrative at all, and he has got a massive following on YouTube. He's very opinionated, which is.
I don't understand. Apparently, he's big with teenagers. I don't understand how someone in their 30s who looks older can be.
Yeah, but he portrays that lifestyle, doesn't he? The Instagram lifestyle, all flash cars, big houses, money, flash watches. It's the kind of aspirational sort of thing for young kids to look up to. He's sort of like that kind of figure that people look up to, that they want to be like him.
Yeah, he's like, he used to be a kickboxing champion. He's got like copious amounts of money. He's very opinionated, and essentially he pushes quite a misogynistic message towards women, and he pushes a very I would say ultra masculine lifestyle, which resonates, I believe, more with the Muslim community than it does with sort of the Western community. But the whole thing is that we have laws to protect free speech. In fact, it's part of sort of like international law that free speech should be said. And if they have done this, and this guy is innocent, then this isn't really about Andrew Tate. This is about us. This is, it's not about Julian Assange. It's about us. If we say the wrong thing at the wrong time, then what's to stop us suffering the same fate? Sort of like, this is the question we have to ask ourselves. Do you want to live in tyranny, or do you want to live in a place where you can say what you want? And that's ultimately the question. If Andrew Tate was completely harmless, then why would they bother with him? That's the other side of the coin as well. But like I said, but realistically, the question you want to ask yourself is why are they stopping somebody exercising their right to free speech? They've done it with Julian Assange, and they've done it with Andrew Tate. They've also done it with Alex Jones, and they've done it with anybody who's got an extreme following.
Yeah, they did it with David Icke as well recently. He's got like a 2-year ban in Europe. He's not allowed to travel anywhere in Europe for 2 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the point being is this could so easily happen to you now, or me, or Chris. Yeah,
But it shows. I think
Who was the Paul Logan guy? Who's that?
that's a different story.
Oh.
Paul Logan's been called out on YouTube recently. He did an NFT thing like a year ago, I think it was, a game that he created online that basically turned out into one big scam. And a YouTube channel called CoffeeZilla exposed him within the last month. He did a whole series and interviewed everyone who was involved in the NFT thing, and lots of people made millions out of it. But he basically Logan Paul hired a group of people to create this program, this NFT thing. Most of them were ex-felons or scammers. He didn't do any background checks or anything like that. It all turned into one big shit show. He sort of distanced himself away from it, and a lot of people lost millions. And recently he was exposed, and he said he was going to sue the guy, CoffeeZilla. Then he made a public apology and said that the game will be completed, but there's a lot of like legal stuff going on in the background nobody knows about, which everyone's just calling him out for his bullshit. This isn't the first time he's run some like Bitcoin scam or NFT scam and basically just, taken millions of dollars from people and then just, created another one and done the same thing again.
Oh, right.
And
So it's different from the Andrew Tate story.
Yeah, the guy's a scammer.
Oh, yeah. Well, he deserves it. I noticed in the UK there was back to society repressing us, the Andrew Bridgen, a Conservative MP, started talking about all the people dropping dead. And he said it was worse than the Holocaust, a crime bigger than... And everybody jumped on him for, you're denying the Holocaust, and just completely ignored what he actually said, the point he was making.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you have to understand that sort of politics is extremely dirty and filthy. Yeah, okay. If you think that this man spoke from his own creative juices, then you've got another thing coming. The speeches are written and they're everything is checked by the lawyers before they even say anything. They don't say anything spontaneously. The chances are it was said so that there was like a half truth to it, so to speak. This is, if we look at this from a purely jinn angle, this is the shaitan, the half truth, yeah. And then there's the other side, so that the people, oh my God, how can you say that about the Jewish nation? I'm Jewish, so sort of like I've got nothing to worry about. But the point being is that if I wasn't Jewish, then it's very difficult for someone non-Jewish to say something like this. But the point being is that they, if you want to suppress something, then you do it in full sight. So of course, then they'll do some law or something that you can't mention this again, and it's dead in the grass. It's that simple. I mean, that's politics for you. I mean, politics is vile. You should know that from your history.
You mean that they don't want us to talk about it at all now?
Yeah, so of course you get a politician, you get him to say something which is half right and half wrong, and of course you then slam him for saying what is half wrong. So of course people forget that he actually mentioned something which is valid. Yeah, that's politics, I'm afraid.
I think you can't even talk about like the Holocaust in any context other than whatever the mainstream has already, put out there. If you talk about denying the Holocaust in some way, or saying that the mainstream narrative of what happened during the Holocaust is incorrect in some way, or pointing out any inconsistencies, then you're automatically called anti-Semitic or something like that. You can't even discuss the subject.
Yeah, it's really bad. So I mean, this is the whole point. I mean, if people understood what is going on, then they would certainly ask serious questions. I mean, the fact that this MP mentioned the Holocaust, to me is a big red flag. It's certainly he said something which is actually going to distract from what he said. Yeah, the man's got the evidence, he's got the facts, he's got everything that he needs, and then he says something stupid like that. I don't believe he said something stupid like that because it was a good idea. He just said it because they wanted a distraction, to put it bluntly, as they always do. Yeah,
So
I mean,
are people dropping dead out there? I mean, it's hard to research it, isn't it? We're all dependent on mainstream news all the time.
Having been on the black web more than I should, I would say that, for what I understand, is that there is a 15% high to the mortality rate worldwide. Countries that were involved in this, yeah. So that's the only evidence that I've seen. But like I said, it was black web. So whether or not it's genuine is another thing, So, but however, there's that old saying: "No smoke without fire." Yeah.
I know, it's weird. We had all the COVID, had all the vaccines, and now it's gone quiet. And of course, it's crazy over in Russia, and of course we are paying so much for food. I mean, £10 for 4 cans of tuna. It's like, I mean, it's crazy. I've just learnt that in all the London suburbs, they're not London. They're like a long way outside London. If you've got a diesel car, every time you get in it, you've got to pay £12. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, what? Because of the carbon emissions?
Yeah.
That's the ULEZ zone. Yeah, I was looking it up today because I have to drive into London in a few days, so I wanted to make sure because my car isn't ULEZ compliant. So I have to pay £12.50 every time I drive inside the outer sort of zone in London. So because my car isn't compliant.
Because I'm inside it, I've got to pay every time I get in the car. I mean, it's crazy. I like the way they bailed out all the big businesses with the COVID. If they can do that, why don't they say to everyone that's got a diesel, right, here's £6,000, we'll take the diesel away. You go and get yourself a petrol car. But they don't care less about the poorer people. It's just, just stick it on there. You've got to pay £12 every time you get in your car. It's really obscene,
They're going to expand. They're going to expand that area soon, aren't they? Is it this year or sometime? They're going to expand it almost all the way up to the M25.
Yeah, I mean, every London borough, but they call it London borough. But these are suburbs. It takes an hour to get into London. It's just
how can you call like places like Croydon, London? I mean, it's like literally an hour's drive into central London.
It's just
yet that's still considered London.
Yeah.
But guys, don't miss the point, guys. They lost a fortune on COVID, yeah. So they need the money back, don't they? Yes. Okay. And the easiest way to get the money back is on the food, because there's no way you can give up food. And the other way, of course, is transport. That's the other way to get the money back. I mean, sort of like, like I said, politicians are extremely filthy and dirty. And, sort of like, the idea of locking a country down and not producing anything, can you imagine the cost of that? Yeah. Realistically, you've halted production, and then when you come back to life again, the smaller businesses are not there to tax. Yeah.
Mm.
So, of course, they now tax, what I would call the vulnerable, because nobody came back from COVID with, sort of, unless you were like some kind of internet guru, nobody came out of COVID with, sort of like shining credentials. I mean, can you imagine the credit ratings as well for people in England? What's happened? Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's quite vile, really, and it will only get worse because if you give politicians half an inch, they will always take a mile. Seriously, and that's. Remember, it started off with London. We want a non, what do you call it? What do they call the middle of London? You can't. You got to pay extra money to drive in it.
Congestion zone. Yeah, I think it's like £15 now.
Yeah, it started off as a congestion zone. Now it's outside of London. Yeah, but they call it something else. Yeah,
well, they say it's still London. They say it's still London. It's sort of at the outskirts of London.
It's not. Soon it'll be all over the UK. It will.
Of course. I mean,
it's really bad. I mean, it's just depressing. I cried actually when I found out. My son told me. I thought, don't get upset. It's all right. Just don't get in the car. That's one of my only small pleasures in life, going for a wee drive every day. Just a little drive. The only sodding pleasure in the whole shit of things, and it's taken from you, it's just made me cry, I mean, because being alive is quite hard, it's quite painful, and now you're like really paying really high prices just to be alive. I mean, it's like, it's not right somehow, it's really, really bad.
No, also the irony of it is that they've pushed like mad the electric cars. And the major manufacturers have said that the infrastructure is not there for electric cars and won't be there for 30 years.
Mm.
So, yeah, but in the UK, they're going to stop manufacturing petrol and diesel cars by, was it 2030? So that's only 7 years from now. So the infrastructure isn't even hit there right now to charge all these electric cars. So in 7 years' time, when everyone's already starting to switch over, even if let's say, I don't know, 40-50% of the country has electric cars, there's no infrastructure to charge those cars. Can you imagine the service stations and the motorways where people are pulling over just to charge their electric cars? There's no infrastructure there to do it right now. So you think it's going to be there in 7 years' time?
Well, not a chance, to put it bluntly. I mean, if the major manufacturers, which is like Mercedes, Chrysler, blah, 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 have said it's, and the other thing as well is they've said it's economically unviable to make an electric car. Yeah, okay, because they're too expensive. And the other thing as well is ironically, because they use the national grid, they cause just as much pollution as petrol cars at the moment. Because of the long charging times and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, from an occult perspective, it's certainly like the shaitan is running the show at the moment, to put it bluntly,
What did you want to say about your book, this book you discovered? Is that offering any light at the end of the tunnel for any of us?
I wouldn't have thought it offers... it helps a person, if you like, concentrate much better, and it also helps somebody have an objective to, what they want to do, so to speak. Yeah. Essentially, it's probably the book of two ways. Could be described as the first book ever on Kundalini awakening. Yeah, okay. But interestingly, going back to what you and your colleague were saying, is there's smacks of corruption with the Book of Two Ways. The Book of Two Ways was actually found in the early 1900s in in a crypt, okay, and it was
In what country?
in Egypt. It was painted all over the walls, but there was also a book found in the coffin. Now, the interesting thing is the guy who found it was Hart Williams, who was a professor at the University of Leuven in Belgium. He found it, but he didn't, because he's not an occultist, he doesn't really understand what the sleight of hand was. And the sleight of hand was, of course, was that the priests sold the people who had died this book, under the guise of, if they use this book and you paint it on their coffin, then they will have a plan when they die to leave this mortal coil and go to, was it Rostau, which is where the Osiris is, and they will achieve Godhead in death. Okay. But what he didn't tell them was that the book by itself, you would have to understand it. You would have to do the dedication. You would have to do all the exercises. You would have to probably work with the book for years before you died. And only if you worked with the book before you died that you would then enter the kingdom of Osiris. So essentially it was just, if you like, a nice little scam, if you wish. Okay. So, so nothing really alters, really, sort of like, the gullible will always be ripped off, unfortunately.
Oh.
And so this fantastic book, if you know what you're doing, if you've had the right training, yes, you can achieve peace in the afterlife through it. If you haven't, then essentially, you've just wasted your money, to put it bluntly, because you don't know how it works. You've got no idea. You've got no training in meditation. You've got no training in raising your Kundalini. You've got no chance of being able to use it, to put it bluntly. Okay. So that's the beginning of what they called the Book of Two Ways. It was before the Book of the Dead, by the way. The Book of the Dead was kind of like the speak and spell version of this book, which essentially was, your heart is weighed, and if your heart is light, you go on to the higher sort of like levels of death, and you meet Osiris. If your heart is heavy, then Ozbek eats your heart and forget it. You have to maybe try next time. Okay. But the whole Book of Two Ways is a completely different game, to put it bluntly.
I've never heard of it. I mean, it's been translated into English now, has it?
Yeah, it was translated way back in the sort of like 1900s, early 1900s. They quite honestly, they don't want you to read this book. Okay. It's the book is a guide to dying, but it's also a guide to life. Okay. It's to do with soul consciousness. And to help you with soul consciousness, there are spells. But once again, the spells are only good if you actually know what level of consciousness that you're actually on. It's a really, really interesting book. The other thing that's quite interesting about it is that the Egyptians used the blue lotus as a, I hate using the American word, but like as a narcotic. It put one into a altered state of consciousness. So they would take this blue lotus, and then they would go through the Book of Two Ways steps and procedures, and they were being guided, if you like, along this path. So, that's very interesting as well, because that also ties into the Elation mysteries, which Plato and Socrates used to
Well,
you
I
do.
can only find it on Amazon, written by Jodi Picoult, The Book of Two Ways.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the idea. But you have to look up the ancient Egyptian Book of Two Ways. If you do that now, you'll find it.
On
Yes.
Amazon?
I'll just put it straight into Google itself. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Put ancient Egyptian Book of Two Ways. Have you found it?
I was actually talking to Sarah recently about. I wanted to ask Brian about this, about soul traps, because I watched a few videos recently on a YouTube channel called Cosmic Agency, I think it's called, who claim to have direct communication with a race of beings called the Tartarians, which I believe are linked to the Palladians. And they were talking about soul traps as soul traps don't really exist, and that's when you die, this idea that your soul can be trapped is a lie, because your soul is actually part of the source, and for that to be trapped would be a ridiculous statement to make. And that what happens is when you die, your perception is trapped. So your focus or your perception is pointed to a certain direction. You're made to look in a certain direction or look at something specific. That's it's a bit like looking at a TV set. Once you're watching the TV set, you're engrossed in what's going on there. But as soon as you look away from the TV set, you're away from that, and your perception's away from that. So when you die, what happens is they try and how do I put it? Trap your perception in a way, to look in a certain way, to go in a certain way. And once you're once your focus is there, that's the trap, and it's not your actual soul that's trapped. What do you think about that idea, Brian?
Okay, you probably asked the right and very much the wrong question. You know, ordinarily I'm in India developing and doing spiritual works. Well, about 3 years ago, just before COVID, I was in India working with a shaman friend of mine, and we were talking about death. And there is a substance you can take in India that will kill you for a certain amount of time. Yeah? Okay. I won't tell you what the stuff is called. And so I decided to take it because, you know, there's no point in guessing. Yeah? Okay. And I also understood I might not come back. Yeah, it could be a one-way trip, to put it bluntly. So we had the shaman, we had a doctor, and we had a nurse. Yeah. Obviously, I've done meditation, etc., etc. I put myself in a deep state of meditation. I took the substance, and technically, I died. All right. All I can describe death as is very similar to oblivion in it's a big park in England where it's a big roller coaster where Alton Towers, you go down it. Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So essentially, what happens is that you take I took this stuff, and literally it was like oblivion, straight into, if you like, the phases of dying. Dying when you're not supposed to die is really, really painful. My soul shook round my body. It really didn't want to come out. And then it came out. Yeah, okay. When it came out, all traces of this earth disappeared. There was nothing. Then I had to get rid of all the entities that were around me as I was dying. I had to release them. Ironically, I learned that anything that was attached to you, you've actually attached it yourself. So I was having to release all the entities. And the final release was the ego, and I knew that if I let go of the ego, then essentially I was dead. But I've gone this far, so I let go of the ego, and when I let go of the ego, I went through something which can be described as the black sun. Yeah, I went through the black sun, and I passed out, and I thought, yeah, it's as some scientist friends of mine said, when you die, you switch off, that's it, you're dead, you're gone. But to my surprise, I came back to consciousness, but my consciousness was completely different. My consciousness was part of the universal consciousness. It was a really strange feeling. And I was just in the universe. I could see everything. Yeah, absolutely everything. However, I started to get bored, really, really bored. And then eventually I felt myself jittering back, and I came back, and the shaman who was with me was really shocked. She said, I've never seen anybody go that far. And I said, what do you mean? I said, I just did what. She said, no, you went that far. And we kind of, eventually I came back to what you call reality. And it was like totally amazing, because when I was in the state of being dead, it was like being surrounded by an incredible love. But like I said, the other thing was that I was so bored in this state. Then I met a fourth generation Sufi, and I told him about my experience, and he said, I can't talk to you anymore. And he said, but thank you for telling me your experience. He says, but I seriously cannot talk to you anymore. It's dangerous. And I spoke to another Sufi friend, and he said, this is really worrying. And I said, why is it really worrying? And he said, because you touched the Godhead. And I said, what do you mean? He said, because it was when God got bored that he created the world, so that you went as far as you can possibly go. Yeah? Sort of like literally, I touched the Godhead before creation. I would like to say that I set out to do it, but I didn't. It happened by accident. But as for meeting your parents, meeting angels and stuff like that, I never got that. Like I said, I went straight to the Godhead. But you have to remember that literally I meditate for an hour every day, and I've done that since I was probably 4 or 5. Yeah? Okay, so, if you do the preparation, then you will get the result. Yeah? Okay? But if you're gonna look at this from like the Jewish angle, if you're gonna go into something like Yesod, and you stay in the realm of illusion, then you will stay in that realm. But you have to break through that realm, and then you have to go into Tifereth, and then the Godhead Ketha. Yeah, okay. And then if you really know what you're doing, you go through Ketha and you join the Godhead. But this is not going to happen overnight. And this realistically is what the Book of Two Ways is about. So when I died, I didn't see anything that allegedly is supposed to happen to you. Okay?
Yeah, well, that is supposed to be a part of the trap in a way. Like when people die, they see the tunnel of light, they see family members, and they say that they go with their family members. That's not what you're supposed to do. That's part of the trap. You have to go where you want to go, not where you're told to go. So it's almost like you completely skip that part altogether.
Yeah, that's absolutely the realm of illusion. Yeah. Which is, I mean, this is why I decided to write the book on the Book of Two Ways, so that people can, when there's no point in reading the book and saying, okay, yeah, that's it, yeah, I can do it now. No, you have to understand the exercises. You have to understand that, like, you know, that we create our own hells, so to speak. So if you're dying and your mind goes off to somewhere, then, as you quite rightly said, like the television, it will just go to that place in the television, yeah, that you want to go to. Where realistically, you have to be connected with the soul, and you know, for that it has to start with very strong meditation, and it has to be directed meditation as well. You know, I mean that's the whole idea of the book of Two Ways, is that people did the meditation under the influence of the Blue Lotus, and they got to, if you like, the Godhead stage through meditation. But one day they would have done it, and of course they would die when they were in the Godhead state of meditation. And that was, you know, literally the whole idea of the mystery school that was behind the Book of Two Ways. It was also behind the Elysian Mysteries. It was also behind early Christianity as well, which, you know, if you read early Gnostic texts, they talk very much of the same thing. You know, it's just that over the years we've been given the story, we meet baby Jesus and that's it, we meet our friends, and, you know, and I believe that probably is fiction.
Do you think religion has a lot to do with that? People's sort of belief in religion affects what they see or what happens when they die. It's
Absolutely.
Almost like,
Absolutely.
They see what they expect to see.
Yeah. I mean, like, for example, the Japanese, anybody who's had a near-death experience with the Japanese always talk about paying the ferryman. Well, you would think it would be Greek, but in the Japanese culture, they talk about this. You know, they talk about paying the ferryman, because apparently, I didn't know it, but that's part of the, you know, the Japanese culture. They believe that this is going to happen when you die, so to speak. Interestingly, I had a friend who worked in an old age pensioners' home, and when some pensioners died, not all the pensioners, they always spoke about, oh, my mother's come for me, my father's come for me, you know, all this kind of thing as well, which is really, really interesting. But, you know, but death is definitely a cultural aspect. You know, how people die is very much what the culture expects of them and how they're going to die. And realistically, you know, that's what happened in Egypt. They didn't want people who were non-adepts being able to ascend to the highest levels of consciousness, and so that's why they invented the Book of the Dead. And that's why it's pretty speak and spell. It's very similar to the Christian thing where you meet baby Jesus and off you go, where you know, there appears to be not much evidence for that. You know, sort of, it's once again, it's incredibly cruel. However, there is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is a completely different publication. But once again, one starts studying the Tibetan Book of the Dead when they start getting close to the late 20s, early 30s, so that they can mentally prepare themselves for the final journey, so to speak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Death is cultural. It certainly is. You know, I mean, sort of like, I've read quite a lot about it. Obviously, being an occultist, the final destination has always fascinated me. What about you, Chris?
What, the final destination? I guess I've always thought of it because, you know, I experience different levels in dreams and bring back the the consciousness of it, and I've experienced continuous consciousness, that I just think it will be just, freedom. And, for me, I'll probably enjoy it because I've studied, the astral body, the mental body, and the different bodies. I'd just like to bathe in God, really, to come out of all of this me and whoever I was and leave it behind and just go back to God and be nothing.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the Godhead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Ironically, if you believed in a God, you would invent the God. Does that make any sense? And you wouldn't get to that level of consciousness because, as I've said, you create your own hell. Yeah. So if you thought there was a God, then essentially you would only go to a certain level of enlightenment when you were in that stage of death. Where if you understood that there is a Godhead and there is a much, there is if you like, a universal consciousness, you're much more likely to get to that universal consciousness. By the way, I sent you a program. Did you use it?
Which
Chris?
one? In Telegram?
Yeah, that one.
The HemiSync?
Yeah. Did you try it?
Not yet, because I haven't got earmuffs. I haven't got, earbuds, actually.
All right.
I need to buy some to do it, but I certainly will do it.
Yeah, because that is one of the strongest trainings you can do, realistically. I don't know if you know that, but it was actually examined by the FBI, and the FBI found it worked. Okay.
Oh, right. To get your mind ready for God?
Well, to get your mind for the Godhead, yeah. And also,
but it depends, I suppose, if you want more adventures. Maybe you like Earth, maybe you like the idea of interacting with different beings, maybe you want to come back here again. I suppose everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean the different being things is quite interesting because I read something recently where the FBI and the CIA and all these guys paid people to take high doses of like DMT, yeah, and to meet the interdimensional beings, and it was found that the interdimensional beings, when these people asked them very, very difficult questions, they couldn't answer the questions. Okay, yeah. And this was across maybe 200 or 300 people. So, so the beings that they were meeting on this kind of consciousness were, if you like, projections of their own consciousness, because the beings actually knew exactly the same as what the people knew. They didn't know more. So, and this was across 200 or 300 people. And, yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about because I've done ayahuasca and I had a very similar sort of experience to what you just described.
Well, you asked some ultimate question and you just didn't get the answer, yeah?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, well, essentially it's you. That's why, I mean.
I sort of had an intention. I gave myself an intention before I took the ayahuasca, but I think I don't know if you've ever done ayahuasca, but it sort of basically just completely takes over. There's no way you can control the experience in any way, shape or form. So I just went on for the ride. I was just pretty much along for the ride for like 7 hours. So that's pretty much what my ayahuasca experience was.
All right, yeah, because I've never done ayahuasca. I've done 5-MeO-DMT, yeah, okay, and I've also did the other drug that kills you. But like, I know through ayahuasca you get more of the visuals.
Yeah.
You get more of the people coming to see you and stuff like this, and what McKenna called the machine elves. Am I correct?
Yeah, I saw beings. Yeah.
Yeah, but apparently they're all creations of your deeper consciousness, which is
Right.
for what the report I read seemed to sort of indicate. However, this isn't that bad, so to speak, because if you can assimilate with this consciousness, yeah, then you can make yourself better, if that makes any sense, because essentially, in that level of consciousness, you're talking to your deepest self. So if you can assimilate with his consciousness and you've got the same idea and you want to go the same direction, when you come back to normality, then you should be super committed with the goals that you want, because you've had the opportunity to talk to your very deepest consciousness, which most people don't ever do in reality.
Do you going back to the death thing? Do you think that like when you die, you can make, I don't know if you call it a conscious choice, but you can make a choice to come back if you wanted to come back here? Is that choice down to you?
Hint. I got no hint of that. Honestly,
Right.
I got no hint of that. Literally, but you have to understand that I've spent all my life as an occultist. Really, yeah. Even when I was 5, I used to meditate. My mother used to, said, "You little heathen, stop doing it." So, like, yeah, so.
But sort of like the idea that you explained that you were bored would give you the impression that you would want to come back here, because then you would just be bored, wouldn't you, when you're dead? If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In a way, you would want to come back to experience more of this.
I wanted to create. That's the thing I wanted to do, and I couldn't create. I thought, because when I was with the consciousness, I thought, well, here I am. I'm in this super consciousness. Now I want to do something, and I can't do something. Yeah. That's how I felt. I didn't think, oh God, I'm missing my wife. I'm missing my friends. I'm just thinking, this is really useless. This state I'm in.
Right.
It's so hopeless. That's how it struck me.
Oh, we've been cut off.
Yeah, they love me, don't they?
Well, thanks for coming on. You've been a great guest, Brian, and come back soon. Thank you, Taj, for co-hosting.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, and thanks. See you next week. Thank you, Revolution Radio, for having me.
Okay.
Take care, people.
Bye-bye.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Still out there?
You're going back in? There's still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, "Hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? Some kind of war junkie?" I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, #1 listener-supported radio, the printing press for freedom at a time when freedom is needed the most.
I am Bill Johnson. Some consider my efforts to be an underground law school. I am not an attorney, and I do not give legal advice. I teach. That's lawful and legal. Consider yourself served. You are to appear Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, Studio A. My forte? Foreclosure and contract law. Grab your legal pad and pen. Learn a broad spectrum of law spanning administrative, criminal,